You play as Red Hood, all grown up and armed with an axe. You embark on an odyssey to avenge the death of your parents. As Red, you set out on a vendetta against Woolfe, the one who was responsible for your father's death. Since I was a young child, I've always loved books. As the daughter of a librarian, it's honestly not too surprising. One of the things I remember most about reading books was when I was younger, I would get to read the winners of Book Week before they were on the shelf. It was a thrill for me, and one book one year stood out in particular for me. It was about the 3 little pigs and the big bad wolf, written from the wolf's side of the story. In this book, the wolf is going to get sugar from the pig's house, but has an awful cold, and as a result sneezes their houses down. Since that book, I've been obsessed with twisted fairy tales. Any kind of fairy tale that is turned on their head or has a different meaning. Like Briar Rose's Sleeping Beauty but set in World War II Holocaust camps. Or Hoodwinked telling Red Riding Hood from a different perspective. All of these different twists on normal fairy tale genre pique my interest. Seeing Red Hood Diaries, I was instantly intrigued. It was as if they melded Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Red Riding Hood into one, and I really wanted to see where they went with this story. The game looks pretty and reminds me a lot of Alice the Madness Returns. It's extremely linear in story, yet you take a few different paths to get different collectibles. Red narrates her story on each level, as she remembers how her parents met and what her father creates in the factory. As you work your way through the story, she learns more about her father's involvement in the toy factory, as well as how her mother and father met in the city. The story seems rather unfinished. I feel that this was due to the developers thinking that they would create a second game, or it could be just down to poor storytelling. It doesn't give you enough about other characters to actually grow a feeling for them. Instead, it tells a 2-minute story and then you are thrown back into the fast-paced platforming again. There was many a time that the game would change direction during a fast-paced chase scene or a boss battle that would make it challenging to see which way to aim your attacks. This gave the clunky mechanics the spotlight when it really shouldn't have. I enjoyed the music. It gave a real aura of mystery and fantasy, which tied well into the game. A lot of detail was put into the environment. A lot of it was not clickable to learn about, but I did like how the developers took the time to add little bits to the game to make it more real and lived in. However, time could have been spent to make the controls much less clunky. Overall, Woolfe the Red Hood Diaries was a fun game to explore, but it did feel only half finished. The boss battle was extremely challenging, and it was a matter of putting the buttons at the right time for me, as I struggled to press the buttons that Granny suggested. I love the writing style. I wish they were able to make a second one, or at least finish the one that they have. If you enjoy fantasy games or platformers, give it a go. Otherwise, I'd just stick to game playthroughs on YouTube. You play as Red Hood, all grown up and armed with an axe. You embark on an odyssey to avenge the death of your parents. Red leaves her granny in her safe place in the forest and heads back to the city, which she finds paralysed with fear and scarred with the plague of kidnappings. As Red, you set out on a vendetta against Woolfe, the one who was responsible for your father's death. The graphics are fairly similar to Alice the Madness Returns, and for a small studio they have made it look exceedingly well. The character of Red is rather rounded off well for a 3D style platformer, although her movement is rather harsh and clunky. The sound comes across rather clear. Without having any issues on my end, the music itself gives off a sense of mystery and intrigue and fantasy. The songs change to adapt each level of what is happening during the stages. I also want to take a moment to mention Red's narration of the story throughout the game. This was a lovely touch, and it was even more fun to see that some of the writing was done with a verse and rhyming feel. It is a 3D environment played in platform style. This can sometimes cause confusion over which way to go. For example, moving forwards or backwards to get upstairs or the like. Luckily, these are only for small parts and not normally for the jumps, although it can cause issues sometimes when the jumps can be missed by the 3D environment being a little bit off. This became more of a challenge during the level where there was a lot of platforms that were floating, and missing a jump became more of a norm for me. The story is only skin deep. I can understand how someone who doesn't have that affinity with the fairy tale genre may find disinterest within the game. The story is not fully told. I believe that they were intending on making another game, however due to funding it was never fulfilled. This is disappointing for me because I did enjoy the story that they started to create and would have loved to have seen how they fleshed it out in future games. You can replay parts to ensure you get all the collectibles, but other than this, there isn't much more of a want to play through. There are a few Steam achievements if you own it on Steam to encourage more playthroughs, or particular types of playthroughs such as Escape the Guards Without Dying, Parkour's Steam achievement. I'm giving this 2 out of 5 howlers.